Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. After 8 long years of this Liberal Prime Minister, costs have shot up and millions of Canadians are struggling to make ends meet. Housing costs have doubled, rent has doubled, mortgage rates have doubled, grocery prices are soaring, and the lineups for food banks are shocking. I received an email from Tyler, who bought a home a couple of years ago, and his mortgage has gone up from $1,600 to $4,000 a month. He says he has no other choice but to sell his home and downgrade to make his life livable. Candace is from Maple Ridge, and she's seen her payments double also. She can no longer afford new clothes for her children and needs to take them out of sports to try and make ends meet. Then there's Shafi. I met him at C-SPAN shipyards in North Vancouver. He's a welder, and he showed me on an app that his mortgage was $7,528 a month. And he told me, he says he's not living in a palace. It's a 40-year-old 4-bedroom home in one of Vancouver's suburbs. And he says he's being forced to work 7 days a week, 10-hour shifts, and he has no freedom. He says he cannot give his body a rest or he's going to lose his home. These aren't just stories, Madam Speaker. These are real lives, and where the same thing is happening across Canada. And the blame rests fully on this Liberal-NDP coalition for their incompetency and ultimately, I would say, the lack of concern for Canadians. And they have shown a lack of basic understanding of economics or running a country. I'll take that back. They are good at running a country to the ground. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, it wasn't that long ago that the nation was one of the richest in the world. But under this Prime Minister, our rankings have been dropping. Country after country has been passing us in GDP and per capita ranking. I met a tourist on the way to Vancouver Island about a month or so ago, and he's come to Canada numerous times over the past 40 years, and he says, he asked me, he says, what's happening to Canada? He says, from his perspective, it just seems to be in decline. And unfortunately, he's right. What has happened to Canada is 8 years of being run by an incompetent Liberal government and joined at the hip with the Socialist NDP and Bloc. And why has everything become so unaffordable? The Liberals went on a crazy spending orgy, doling out hundreds of billions of dollars. Yes, that, if you want to know the definition of that word is excessive and indiscriminate indulgence in a specified activity. We'll call that spending. The Prime Minister added more debt to Canada than all the previous Prime Ministers before him for 150 years. They've been absolutely careless with finances, and they've been racking up, for all intents and purposes, the credit card debt. And this has caused great problems, chaos. But they made sure that their friends and buddies and insiders have gotten their share. I think of the ArriveCan app scam, where millions of dollars have been spent or given essentially to a two-person company in the basement of their house for no work other than send a few emails out. And something that should have cost a few $1,000s has cost millions of dollars. There's been scandal after scandal after scandal. It's almost become just part of the play, part of the narrative. Last week, we heard that the Green Slush Fund, the $1 billion Green Slush Fund, the chair of the Sustainable Development Technology had to resign as it and is under investigation by the RCMP because there was money that was going directly to her company and to her own self. And these are some of the buddies that we're seeing. And this is happening in I don't have time to talk about all the different situations and people that have gotten rich off of the Liberals. And one thing we will do, Conservatives, that we will turn over these stones. That's our objective here in Parliament, but also if we are elected in government. So the message, Madam Speaker, from the Liberals for a long time was essentially interest rates are low. So what's the danger of borrowing? We'll borrow, spend. Well, what has happened because of that? Well, for one thing, interest costs have escalated. We're now spending $51 billion on interest payments alone this year. That's more than we spend in health transfers. It is more than we are spent, twice as much as we're spending on the military, the Canadian military, which is one of the very few things that the Liberals decide to cut back on, is the Canadian military in a time of great danger. We look at what happens with Russia attacking Ukraine, the situation with China, with all sorts of threats. The Liberals decide to cut the one important piece that they actually should be increasing, but that's typical for them. And so Canadians are suffering by their indulgence in spending, their addiction, and they keep on hearing the word, oh, we're investing. We the Liberals are investing in this and we're investing in that. Well, it's not their money, Madam Speaker, it's taxpayers' money. And their actions have also led to not just increased interest charge, but have led to significant rise in inflation. And anybody that goes to the grocery store can attest to that. People are not eating as nutritiously as before because of this. I met with a number of university students last week, and they're saying they're having a hard time making ends meet. They're using the food bank, and I talked to the president of the university and said that the lineups and the use of the food banks there has gone up dramatically. And actually, we're seeing 2 million Canadians a month go to the food banks. This is not good. And the Liberals and the NDP need to account for this. They can try and blame Harper from 8 years ago. It rests full square on their shoulders. Now, so what's happening here? The Liberal brain trust, and we're seeing this in the bill here, began to panic because for them, what this is about is politics and power and money. And as inflation has gone up and costs have gone up, guess what's gone down? Their poll numbers, and that's causing a little bit of panic over on the government benches. So what have they been forced to do? Well, they've raised interest rates. It's a time-tested way to lower inflation. But what have they succeeded in doing? They have escalated the cost of carrying a mortgage. Half of mortgage owners will be renewing their mortgages in the next 2 years, $70,000 per month, and it's hitting them hard. Everywhere in Canada, especially the areas where there's the biggest mortgages, like in metropolitan Vancouver and Toronto, Victoria, and the other large centers. People are losing their homes and losing their quality of life. And this is real, and it is painful. It is real, and it is painful. Now, I know that one of the Liberal solutions is, we'll just extend their mortgage to 90 years, 100 years. Your great-great-great-grandchildren can pay off your mortgage. You can keep your home. That is not a solution. That is not a solution. So, Madam Speaker, I see that the Liberals have realized the big mess that they have done, and there's a political urgency, and what they have said is, let's take a piece of the Conservative Party policy and put their superhero outfits at, let's have no fear, we're here, we're going to help them with some of the solutions. They took one of our solutions right there, which was to take away the GST from rental housing, purpose-built, but there's a lot more they need to do. Thank you.